Welcome to the Refreshing Leadership Podcast. And here we are always looking for two things. One, a refreshing take on leadership development, not just the conventional wisdom. And the second thing that we're looking for is ways to refresh our leadership itself on a daily basis. And that's why this topic feels absolutely perfect. I have Adam Kingl joining me today to talk about his new book, Executive Eats, which does feel like its own category of cookbook. It speaks to something that Adam and I both come across regularly in our work with leaders. Leaders saying that they don't have enough energy or that their focus isn't where they would like it to be. And of course, the bit about being exhausted or teetering on burnout. On the brink of burnout. So in this conversation, Adam is going to talk to us about how we can use food not just for pure health or perfect macros, but actually to support sustained energy and focus and concentration and emotional regulation, creativity, even mindfulness. And we talk about the building blocks of different positive states that we want to be in at work. But also we talk about the practical side, flavor profiles, batching, building block recipes that then can be added to each week, each day to create slightly different twists on the same basic recipe. And we focus on how we can use cooking to reduce stress rather than create more stress, because this is a genuine tension. And of course, I bring in that lens of the busy working parent trying to function at a high level, but also wanting to feed the family and manage real life. So let's dive into this conversation. Fun fact, Adam was my boss at London Business School, and it's always fun to have your old boss on the podcast. And I think it just goes to show what an excellent working relationship we have, that obviously I'm keen to get him on and to talk about his book today. All right, Adam, great to have you on, and it would be great if you could introduce yourself.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm pleased to hear. I guess I wasn't a traumatic boss. That's always a good first objective in life, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm an author, an educator, keynote speaker, and consultant. So I have a portfolio career. I'm affiliated with a number of business schools here in the UK, such as Imperial College, London Business School, UCL School of Management. And this is my third book. My first book, Next Generation Leadership, was about multi-generational collaboration. My second, Sparking Success, was about creativity in business. And really excited to have this book, Executive Eats, the Cookbook for a Better Working Life, which is the first book that I've co-authored with Jakob Redzakowski of Imperial College. And as you say, we suspect, we've done our research. It seems this is the first cookbook ever for a professional corporate audience.
Yeah. And I think that is what's so exciting about it, isn't it? Often people see those two areas as quite separate, their working life and then how they fuel themselves and their health and nutrition. And that's what you've really brought together. And that's why I felt it was a really interesting topic for refreshing leadership, because here we want to look at the unexpected lenses, not just the standard business and strategy, productivity advice, but, what are the deeper foundations underneath all of that? And what made food feel like such an important lens for you to tackle next in your series of books? And let's give the rundown of the books, because I think it's always nice to see, what that path has been. So do you want to just reel off the books that you have authored and published?
Yeah, and actually, and this is also an answer to your question, because I think each book is the product of what I heard in the preceding years from lots of executives and business professionals saying, this is really on my mind, either as a concern or as an exciting opportunity. So, about 5 years ago when I wrote, or 6 years ago when I wrote Next Generation Leadership, that came about because executives were saying, I don't know how to manage these obstreperous youngsters. Help us to figure out how do we keep, retain, and engage the young people. So I wrote that book. And actually, this goes back to a point that I think one reason why people do research and writing, at least this is according to an academic that I've met and respect, has said, if you see something happening in the world and you have a question about it, and you can't really find a satisfying answer, if you're curious enough about it, you'll do the research yourself. And I think that's not a bad definition for why research happens. Then, as digitalization was occurring, the digital revolution, the AI revolution, 3 years ago, executives were saying, I need to be more adaptable. I don't feel I have enough sufficient inspiration. I can't sort of change my life, and its habits sufficiently in order to meet the moment. How do I be more creative? And so I researched highly successful leaders in creative arts because I figured, well, they're very good at adaptation and creativity, and can you extrapolate those habits and apply them in a corporate audience? That's what led to Sparking Success. Lately, when I've asked executives what's on your mind, what's bothering you, etc., over the last few years, it's been more physical. They've said things like, I just don't have enough energy throughout the day, or I can't focus throughout the day. It's a 8-hour day, though that's optimistic. It's a 14-hour day, but I'm only concentrating for about 6 of those hours. Help. Or they're saying, my mood is all over the place. I just snapped at my direct report. Why did I do that? That wasn't their fault. They certainly didn't deserve that kind of response from me. Why am I being so grumpy? So can I kind of stabilize and improve my emotional tenor throughout the day as well? And look, we're talking about lots of different things that affect those states, no doubt about it. Hydration, exercise, sleep, mindfulness, your quality of life, your how you socialize. Do you have a network of friends? Your home life. It's that, yeah, of course, all that. But there is also a really important element, which is what you are ingesting, the fuel, which is not just for helping satiety, but what is it doing? How is it affecting our states? And we know that nutrition affects those states that I just listed, as well as many others. So, because I'm a foodie myself, and because I have a brief career in food, my co author has a much more extensive career as a chef before he went into academia. This intrigued us enough to extend the curiosity into writing a book.
Yeah. And it's reminding me actually of when we were at LBS together working, and you sent around these amazing Christmas holidays recipes, right? Some recipes for the holidays, and they were quite involved. And that is something that I want to get into in the actual process of cooking, because I think everybody has different versions of, what cooking is to them. And what what do we class as cooking? Some people say they find cooking therapeutic, and for other people it's very stressful. I also think that cooking, if you want to be enjoying cooking on a weekly basis and you have a family, it requires quite a lot of planning and therefore some executive function as well. So we can get into a lot of that. But do you want to just tell us in a nutshell what this book is, and give us a flavor of what some of the recipes look like, and therefore why they are catered to this sustained focus and performance over
Yes.
the working day?
Yeah, happy to. So the book is composed of 10 chapters, and each chapter includes the business case. So what have I heard, and what is kind of my prior, research experience in teaching and consulting told me about, why this theme is important. So each chapter is one of those states, that I've mentioned, or conditions, or positive lenses of executive life. So the
So,
business case, yeah.
So, what might be a couple of examples of those 10 states?
Yeah, so I mentioned 3 of them: sustained energy, mood boost, focus and concentration. But also, there's just a quick boost of energy, kind of to get you started in the morning. There's actually something which actually occurs a lot, and I think causes a lot of stress in the workplace, which is bring treats into the office. The dreaded charity bakery day. How do you do that without giving yourself like a stroke? Celebration. Actually, this is part of a wider theme that I think the more achievement oriented we become and competitive, we don't stop and celebrate our successes. And one way in which you note and you put a pin on taking a moment to celebrate is through food. So that's one. Detox is another. It seems that half the people that I encounter are or have just come off a detox of one kind or another. A lot of detox regimens are actually quite unhealthy for you. It's sort of, they feel like the equivalent of going to confession. Some ridiculous things I've heard, like just consuming cider vinegar, like and cayenne pepper, like all day every day for X number of days. It's like, how can you function, much less perform on that kind of a diet? So we propose some recipes, that would be like detox, but also actually enjoyable. So an artichoke and pea soup, a hot kale salad with lemon and nuts, a tomato stuffed with like a lemon sole with like but with the juices from the tomato and some white wine. All of these things for various reasons are detoxing, but are enjoyable, yeah, as well, and are not incredibly stressful, to cook, prepare, etc. We have a chapter on creativity, because actually I think, well, of course, cooking can be creative, but I certainly don't want to just kind of willy nilly throw things together. But actually, my previous book on creativity showed that culinary arts is a great way to start to kind of rewire our brain to practice some habits of allowing ourselves to be open to inspiration. So we have some things in there, like, for example, popcorn ice cream. That's not a huge stretch, of the imagination. But even in doing those kinds of activities, we're wiring our brain for the parallel experience of being open to new possibilities at work. So, just a few recipes.
Yeah, I've got to stop there because I'm already desperate now to open that cookbook and get going on a few things, especially soup-based things. I always find really hearty, and I know they go down well with the family. And then also this popcorn ice cream, I'm like desperate to give it a go, because I think effort and involvement and level of sort of how much are you willing to put into the cooking experience is important. Everyone's going to have different degrees of what they can do, and what I'm hearing there, unless you tell me that it's like ice cream from scratch, is that something like popcorn ice cream is a fun twist on ice cream that's quite doable, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes you want an easy win as well.
Yeah, it is. So it's interesting. About half of our recipes are quick and easy. At least half are quick and easy to prepare. Generally, fewer than 30 minutes to get it done. No incredible skills or experience required. Some of the recipes are over 30 minutes. Don't require extensive skills as well, but take a little bit more time. That doesn't mean that we want people to be intimidated. What it notes is that it gets people more into the habit of using cookery as another, arrow in their quiver for mindfulness, for taking a moment, for the simple pleasure of repetitive tasks that give you a sense of kind of achievement or calm throughout the day. Now, if some listeners are just saying, well, all I can do is buy like pre-prepared M&S microwave dinners, and that's the extent of what I do, thank you very much. Okay, then I can't help you. However, if you're willing to just make a little effort, or what I should say, because already this sounds like it's penance. If you're willing to invest a little bit of fun in just starting to practice a skill, we know that the act itself is good for our well-being and health. There's recent research out of UCL which indicates specifically cooking, not extensive cooking, not Michelin star cooking, just cooking, not stressful cooking, kind of the daily act, can help with blood pressure, can help with reducing stress and anxiety. If you start bringing in other people to help you, that communal nature, we know that creating community and feeling a sense of communal activity can prolong life. This is one of the common traits in these, blue zones in the world. Like, what do these people have in common? Community and communal activity is another. Also, it helps with, of course, motor skills, concentration. And many people, me included, report that it actually relaxes you rather than stresses you. Of course, the point is, don't give yourself a challenge in the kitchen, which enables stress rather than reduces it. But there are just a few, I think, little techniques around cooking to help us to de-stress it, and then those become the toolbox around which we can then just relax into the pleasurable act of cooking.
Oh, I love that. It is definitely one of those multi-dimensional activities, isn't it? And one that is connected to sort of that more everyday creativity. So before we started this call, I was telling you about gardening. And to me, that's another one, is like, what's under your nose? What is something that is so accessible on a daily basis that you can start to integrate and that can bring so many different benefits? So I love the fact that you are almost sort of re-elevating the art of cooking in this conversation, right? And to that, then I do have what about and I'm going to say mum, right? What about the busy mum who is, working, rushing home, then thinking, gosh, got to think about the dinner for the family or the kids. what do you say to them? Because they might be having a very different experience right now of cooking.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we thought about that because we certainly recognize that many readers will be time poor. And you said there is an element of planning involved, but a little bit of planning has a huge return on that investment. Let me give you an example. One of my favorite all-time recipes in the book is a really simple mango and cucumber salad. What's lovely about it is it plays with contrasts, crunchy and soft, vegetal and sweet, sour and rich from the olive oil in the vinaigrette. Now, let's say you make a batch of that on Sunday night, and you then bring individual bowls of that to work with you um, on, say, Monday through Wednesday. You might think, well, that sounds wonderful, Adam, on Monday, but Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm already bored of it. It's easily adaptable. So think of it, that salad, yes, it's a wonderful standalone, but it also can be a building block from which you can create hugely different flavor profiles that really don't create more work. So let's say you just have that salad as I described on Monday. Tuesday morning, you pour out a little serving size, but you add some diced avocado, some chopped up coriander. Unless you're one of those people where genetically tastes like soap, then obviously don't do that. A little fresh chili and some lime juice, and all of a sudden you're in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Wednesday, you add some thinly sliced lemongrass, a little dash of fish sauce, some crushed roasted peanuts, and some diced tofu, and you're in Southeast Asia. Completely different profiles. Also, that you will feel full for a longer period of time, so you aren't eating the dreaded sandwich with the carbs that give you the energy surge followed by wanting to take a nap. I've given you protein from the peanuts, fiber from the cucumber, protein from the chicken, etc. But also, there's an element of nutrition here for performance. The magnesium in that mango that you're eating Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday is great for concentration and focus. That cucumber contains folic acid, otherwise known as folate, otherwise known as vitamin B9. That's great for mood boost. So that helps keep you emotionally sustained throughout the day, not just your energy.
There's a few things that you've said there, Adam, that I think are really important and that definitely, putting the busy parent hat on, speak to me anyway. One is batching. So anything that is using a sense of scale, and it's not a one off, and that therefore you're actually doing something planful that then can feed into your week. All of these things are like gold dust for the busy working parent or leader. And so that really is fantastic. The other thing you mentioned there was flavor profiles. And I think that that's a nice concept to remind us all of, right? Because when we're probably planning our nutrition and meals and all of that for the week, we're probably not thinking in flavor profiles, right? We probably just go with a default that is relatively easy, and every now and then we may be able to switch that up a bit. So I think that was a great thing that you've mentioned there. It's probably something that you've given a lot of thought to in the way that you've thought about this topic. The other bit that I thought was great as well was that you obviously referred to the nutritional benefits of these different foods. So a lot that you've packed in there. Is there anything you want to add about how you tend to think about, as a foodie, how you tend to think about flavor profiles in your week, or as you would be recommending people to plan their weeks?
Yeah, I mean, one area that I always urge people to do when they say, "Well, I just feel kind of stuck with food and cooking. It just doesn't feel very exciting." We tried to make the recipes kind of appetizing and interesting and exciting in and of themselves. But the second part is playing with contrasts is, I think, a really simple tool. So when I say contrast, of course, including a blend of all the different elements that our taste buds are capable of. So sweet, salty, bitter, sour, umami. Umami really is a thing, by the way, and that's that kind of meatiness, a mouth feel that you get from not just meat. So if you're a vegetarian, fear not, you get this from seaweed, tomatoes, parmesan, etc.
Mushroom?
Um, Mushrooms, yes, exactly, that's right. So including contrasts of the of flavor pieces is one. Another, play with temperatures, hot and cold. Have put a hot seared tuna steak on top of a cold salsa, right? And all of a sudden that wakes up the mouth. Also texture, smooth and crunchy. You know, like that's why, for example, I think we love things like crumbles. You know, crunchy topping with a warm kind of creamy, fruit, and then you add custard, and now particularly cold custard. Now you're also playing with hot and cold, crunchy and smooth, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So all these little things are just ways in which you can make your cooking more exciting for yourself and your family, and then play with it. Right. These are all just variations, and just keep that in mind as you're preparing your food.
I think that's brilliant. I already feel inspired to sort of go and shake it up a bit. And I think it's, when you go and eat somewhere and something really fresh that looks really simple, it's a bit like going and seeing contemporary art, right? It looks like you could potentially go and do it yourself, but somehow you're not doing that on a daily basis at home. Likewise, you go and eat, in a food court and you try something different. You think, well, why am I not doing that all the time? And so it's sometimes little touches that are not huge amounts. You probably do need a little bit of time. Digest your cookbook, for example. Go and stock up the pantry with some of these ingredients that do elevate, without too much effort. One thing I've noticed, for example, is that in Indian cooking we love coriander, right? We love that as a garnish, but actually the dried coriander is not bad, especially when it's used in an air fryer, and it can end up being quite a useful but sort of backup option, because things that get fiddly, like having fresh coriander at your fingertips, sometimes can be fiddly, or it can end up going black before you've had a chance to use it, and things like that. So finding easy wins, I think, or ways to have some perennials around in the pantry that can just elevate as well, I think is helpful. Is there anything that you want to say on that?
Yeah, well, I love you're actually combining kind of the habits of cooking and gardening, right? Say have some perennials in your kitchen. I think that's a great point, right? And I just call them building blocks, right? Which are things like your favorite herbs and spices. And yeah, I'm a big advocate of dried herbs and spices. I have no issue at all with having those kinds of things. Then you don't have to worry about, oh, I can't make that recipe because I don't have this fresh, et cetera, et cetera. No, you don't. Of course, go with dried. That's fine. Um, having using the freezer, for goodness sake, right? I mean, you really, if people are caught out and they said both my fridge, my freezer, and my pantry are empty, then we just haven't gotten into the habit at all of thinking about cooking and the preparation of food. And it doesn't have to be, daily. Replenishing the cabinet, the freezer, the fridge can actually be once a week, and from which you can create completely different things, or create, as I say, a couple of building block ingredients, and then varieties and additions to those building blocks.
Yeah, yeah. Some of this we sort of know, but it can be helpful to remember. And for those of us that have to be fairly regimented about these things, we have a weekly online order. It's really easy to refresh things. But what I have started to do more recently is think about some of the nicer things, some of the healthier things that I want to make in the week, and just make sure that I have those to hand, because time is going to be tight in the evenings and things like that. So you want to have taken that little bit of time to do some planning. Do you have any specific tips, having either heard from, participants or people that you've worked with, or yourself, things that are the difference between you having a great food week and not? Any tips that you think are useful to share for my leaders?
Yeah, well, one is, I think, fresh food, right? We know that our body rewards us for eating fresh produce. So always, what I find is I feel better if I know that I've been eating some fresh fruit and veg. The great news, though, again, there's nothing wrong with frozen, right? So you can buy fresh, chop it up and freeze it, or buy bags of frozen diced, fruit and veg. But use that, add that to your two ingredients. So, for example, one of the recipes in the book is called cowboy cassoulet. And it's just because it's a bit of a creative combination of the cassoulet idea is, beans, legumes. That's the nutrition element, right? Because beans and legumes are really a superfood. In France, they will add lots of fatty meats to that, etc. And I'm suggesting just adding just a little bit of sausage, for example. But then, unlike traditional cassoulet, I then stuff it with veg, lots of carrots and celery and onion and fresh herbs or dried herbs, and it just wakes up the whole dish. And we feel better for it, and we're getting more dietary fiber, and I'm lowering the GI in there, so I'm feeling more full throughout the day. I could even bring it to work, reheat it in the microwave. Um, so I think that's key. Making sure that you're not just consuming, for example, cheese and bread, even though I know how easy that is.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody, I guess, has their own version of convenience foods and what they know when things are sort of not going quite as smoothly, what ends up going out the window and what they end up reaching for. And sometimes I think it's about having things that, on those, I always say to my leaders or people that I'm coaching, is this going to work in your busiest week? What can we do to set
Right.
you up for success in your busiest week? Because
Yeah.
people have more of those types of weeks on average than they're sort of the ones where all the best habits are possible. So
Yeah.
sometimes I want to make sure that I've got stuff. So for me, just a discipline of soaking my oats the night before, and
Yeah.
having that already is just a little way of doing that, and it's actually a really relaxing thing to do before bed. So I wondered to what extent, okay, so I know you, Adam, as well, and I know that it sounds like there are going to be those more involved recipes in the book for people who are less confident in the kitchen. What would you encourage them to do to sort of start to bridge that gap? Because I think for a lot of us, we'll have our standard go-to recipes, we'll try a few new things every now and then, but actually, building in new recipes is, I think it is not always very well, the pathway is not always made very clear. So for me to truly integrate a new recipe into my life, I need to do it repeatedly over a
Yes.
few weeks. And sort of improve it or see where I probably am going to tweak it one way or another. It's
Yeah.
very rare that I stick to a recipe. And so actually bringing in variety into your repertoire, and also, like you've said, ones that are going to be beneficial from a performance perspective, I think that takes time to build up. Do you want to, as the final bit of this conversation, I'm going to bring Adam back for another conversation, but as the final part of this, is there anything that you would recommend in terms of how to sort of approach this if people
Yes.
are starting to see all of these multidimensional benefits? How would you take it slowly, I guess, in a way that, maybe by this time in 6 months or 3 months, you've found yourself in a much better place, but you haven't tried to, I don't know, do it all at once?
Yeah. I would say first think about maybe some state that you want to improve, like lower calorie or higher focus and concentration throughout the day. The book gives you then a whole table of nutrients that you could think about with recipes. And you don't even, as you say, we all adapt recipes and spark off that and make our own recipes. But then make one thing, whether it's from the book, from a different book, from your own imagination, but make it something simple. And I would say just make that one new thing once every 2 to 3 weeks. Let's say for once you make your own chicken soup, right? Just chicken, broth and bones, mirepoix, bay leaf, and maybe and water and maybe a little white wine or something like that. Reduce it, take out the bones, shred the chicken, add it all back in, strain it, done. Or I should say skim off the fat, done, but leave all the veggies and chicken in there. Now you can eat that and it will be delicious. The point again is if you only do that once every 2, 3 weeks, this is not onerous. But then you now have, again, this building block from which you can make a dozen other recipes. Add a little coconut milk and some shredded greens, and all of a sudden it's kind of like a laksa, right? Reduce it down so it's quite so it's thicker, and add some noodles, some cooked noodles, and that chicken soup actually becomes a sauce with that shredded chicken protein in it, etc., etc., etc. There's no right answer to this, save your own imagination. So but all we're saying is make one new thing every couple of weeks, but select something, invent something from which you know you can then create other things. So then by the end of 6 months, to answer your question, you don't have six new possible recipes that you feel confident preparing. You potentially have dozens.
I love that. I love that. And again, I think this is what you're really bringing to this conversation, Adam, which is and through the work of this book is that you're bringing some of that structure that I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes can be missing when, in a typical cookbook. You've talked, very clearly there about, well, first of all, how to integrate a new recipe, but it's not just a new recipe, it is a building block that then can be utilized in lots of different ways, different flavor profiles. So actually, you've added a whole other lane to your culinary repertoire over the course of a couple of weeks, months. So I think that's really powerful. The other thing that I think is going to be really interesting for people is this idea of a particular state and then going to the almost sciencey bit of, okay, well, what can we do from a nutrition perspective here? What are those nutrients? And then only once those two things have been addressed. So starting with, we love this, don't we? In coaching psychology, positive psychology, we love to think about, that ultimate, what is that positive state that we want to be in, or what is the goal here? Then underpinning, what is the science and nutrition underpinning that, and then going to the recipe. That's probably a very different way of doing it. I mean, I know that there is cooking for all types of things, but for a specific state, I think that's a really cool way of approaching it. So I'm really looking forward to diving into that myself.
Great. Yeah, and you're right. Absolutely. It is a different way of thinking about cooking, and it is intentionally trying to address how we feel better about ourselves at work, at home, rather than just thinking about things that will taste good in and of itself, or it's easy, or it's fast, or it's a book that addresses a specific health issue, like I have to eat gluten free or whatever it might be. Here, we're trying specifically to say, how can I just help one thing that I wish I could feel and be better at? And then from there, you let your skills and your creativity build on something that hopefully becomes, a lifelong habit, which then makes that state more sustainable and long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Looking forward to diving in. I do have more questions for you. So, for this part of the conversation, thank you so much, Adam. Do you want to tell people where they can find the book, when it's being released, everything they need to know as we wrap up this conversation?
Of course, it's called Executive Eats, the Cookbook for a Better Working Life. It launches on the 16th of June, 2026, and it should be available, at all book retailers online, and hopefully you'll see it on shelves after the 16th as well.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, Adam. And for all of you listening, if you have somebody in your life who either wants to do more cooking or is struggling with building some of those habits, send them a link to this episode. It costs nothing, and you might help them access one of these really positive states in a systematic way. So thank you all for listening, and I look forward to connecting with you next time. Bye bye.